Oda has finally revealed Zoro's father, if you didn't know, and today we'll be discussing his history, powers, and more shocking details about his true identity, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Chill parking with it and smash that like button if you enjoy seeing One Piece videos like this one on the channel and want to keep them coming. Make this the video you enjoy the Nakama by subscribing and hitting that notification bell to turn on all notifications so you don't miss future One Piece videos and updates. You can help us reach our insane goal of 2 million subscribers here on YouTube with one click of that virtual button, and I would be eternally grateful for that. And now without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. So although it may be weird for some people, Oda has revealed Zoro's entire family tree in an SBS rather than doing it in the main story. That's one of those sections between the actual chapters in a manga volume. I know some people don't like when Oda releases such important information outside of the story, but as we'll see, the SBS still leaves room for some cool reveals in the main story of the manga. So let's briefly go over that SBS before we really get into the specifics and the crazy implications of Zoro's father and his powers. So Zoro's grandparents were Roronoa Pinzoro and Shimotsuki Furiko, who was the older sister of Shimotsuki Ushimaru. Because of their similar appearance, the fact that Ushimaru was also a gifted swordsman, the fact that Ushimaru was also the descendant of the sword god and Zoro lookalike Shimotsuki Ryuma, many thought that Ushimaru was actually Zoro's father, but he was actually his great uncle, as this SBS reveals. We'll circle back to the significance of that reveal shortly because it shattered a very popular theory about Zoro's father in the community. A theory so popular that I think virtually everyone who talks about One Piece on YouTube covered it. But back to that in a bit. For now, we are told that Zoro's grandpa Roronoa Pinzoro was a swordsman from Shimotsuki village. So Zoro has swordsmen on his grandma and grandpa's sides, which perhaps helps to explain why he's so gifted himself. So back to the family tree, and Shimotsuki Furiko and Roronoa Pinzoro had a child named Roronoa Arashi. He married a daughter of thieving bandits called Terra. Together they had Roronoa Zoro. So there you go, that's his father and mother. We're told Mother Terra, whose name means earth, died of an illness. Meanwhile, Roronoa Arashi, at least we're told here, died in a battle against pirates. His name Arashi means storm. That's the info we got in the SBS. But we're going to go much further here. Before that though, let me bring up the prevalent Zoro father theory that was shattered by this SBS. Namely the theory that Zoro's father was Ushimaru and that Ushimaru was Admiral Greenbull. Many have pointed out what they thought were clues of this connection, and once we get into them, you'll see that they are pretty difficult to ignore. For instance, Ushimaru, although Oda has revealed now that he had blue hair, he still wore a robe with a green bull on it. I mean, you gotta admit, in and of itself, that is a big coincidence. And the points go on. Fujitora and by extension Aramaki as a duo appear to come from Wano. Yes, Fujitora dresses in a more traditionally Wano style, but many have pointed out, the first one I know of being Mr. Morge in his now over 2-year-old video called Proof Greenbull is Zoro's Father, that the two are written as a duo with history, and given that these powerhouses came from outside the marine system, unlike past admirals, it's likely that they would have come from Wano, a place outside of world government control, and the place that even Sakazuki didn't want to mess with because of the power of their samurai, which he called an unknown military force in Wano. A fear like that definitely makes sense if you know 2 admiral level characters came from the place. So the SBS revealed that Ushimaru is clearly not Zoro's father, and since that discovery was made, I personally haven't seen anyone else talking about Green Bull still being Zoro's father. And since Oda told us that Arashi died in a battle against pirates, that also probably led to people dropping the Green Bull is Zoro's father theory. However, is there more to meets the eye here, and is it too soon to give up hope on the Green Bull is Zoro's father theory? Yes, Ushimaru is not Zoro's father, and yes, Green Bull's probably not Ushimaru, but that's exactly why Green Bull still can be Zoro's dad, despite the fact that now we know Ushimaru can't be, since he's Zoro's great uncle. So how can we take Oda's SBS information into account and still argue that Green Bull is Zoro's father? Well, for starters, we accept that Roronoa Arashi died, but in a Westley in The Princess Bride kind of way, where he quote-unquote died only to change his identity and become the Dread Pirates Roberts. And honestly, we don't even have to look outside of One Piece for a precedent for this. Think about how the pirate Kuro faked his death and took on a new identity, or how the thought to be dead Sabo lost his memories, so he forgot about Luffy. If Oda brought Zoro's father, a supposedly dead character, back, it definitely wouldn't be the first time. And he'd probably get even less backlash than usual because it was in an SBS that it was revealed, not in the actual main story. And in this case, it would make a lot of sense. Just think about how he writes other characters and their fathers. Think about it. Sanji's dad, bad guy but special. Usopp's dad, special. Luffy's dad, very special, and all of them alive. Oda never shied away from giving his most important characters important parents, not to mention living parents that still have agency in the world of One Piece. Even for Shanks, it's becoming more and more apparent that Saint Figurland Garling is Shanks' relative, if not straight up his father. Then think of Ace and Roger, and the list just goes on. In such a series, it's likely that Zoro's father would also be a big deal and even come back to play in the story, like all of these other fathers. Considering how important and strong Zoro is, I can't imagine Arashi's story being just a footnote in an SBS saying he died in a battle against pirates. It's just not the way Oda does things, especially for his most hyped characters. And keep in mind, just like Zoro, Arashi was a descendant of the sword god Ryuma. Ushimaru was his uncle, and his dad was also a swordsman. So it's very unlikely he would go down so easily, as this SBS makes it appear. So regardless if he got amnesia like Sabo or not, if he's a bad guy dad like Vince Smoke Judge or not, we're arguing here how Arashi might have died only to take on a new identity, that of Aramaki, and he even got to keep the first 3 letters of his name. One of the meanings of the word Aramaki is to cover, and it could well be that he's covering up his true identity, that of Arashi. Now let's look at all the clues that Green Bull is Zoro's father, and there are a lot, including new ones, and even ones as we're going to get into in the SBS itself. But we don't have to discard the old clues either. For instance, Arashi was the son of the sister of the guy who wore green bulls on his robe. In other words, we don't have to abandon that huge coincidence. The green bulls could be a family thing passed on from one generation to the next, and so the fact that the admiral is called Green Bull could still point to it being Zoro's father. Then there's the fact that unlike Ushimaru, it was revealed in the anime that Green Bull does have green hair. Again, there are a lot of other characters with green hair, and they obviously aren't related to Zoro, so I'm not saying, aha, they both have green hair, so they have to be related. However, taken together along with everything else that I've mentioned and I'm going to mention, it just makes for a stronger case that Green Bull is Zoro's father. We mentioned why many in the community feel that Green Bull is originally from Wano, which would make sense for Zoro's father as well. Then there's Green Bull's powers. If you'll recall, Arashi's wife was called Terra, which means earth in several languages. Since Green Bull's woods fruit powers make him a forest human, which is heavily related to the idea of Terra and the earth, it seems to be another nod from Oda as to his true identity. Then there's just the countless parallels between Zoro and Green Bull. As we know, like Zoro, Arashi had swordsmen on both sides of his family, so chances are he was a gifted swordsman in his own right. Well, although we haven't seen him use it yet, Green Bull has a Shirasaya-like katana on his hip. It must be said, Green Bull, after all the hype, was seemingly pretty underwhelming at Wano. At least when we consider what happened after he made quick work of the Beast Pirates. He seemed to have trouble with the Red Scabbards, Momo, and Yamato, and then ran away when Shanks told him to. Keep in mind, this dude has a 3 crown bounty, aka a bounty of 3 billion like the other admirals like Garp and even like Luffy. So the most obvious explanation for why he was underwhelming against the Scabbards, Momo, and Yamato is probably because he didn't get serious before Shanks interrupted him. And in my view, the sword is probably the proof of that. Going full out, he probably uses his sword, and if he is Arashi, then he's likely a beast with that sword. And by the way, that katana itself is just another nod to his Wano origins. Many have also mentioned the parallel to Zoro and Green Bull's introductions. Zoro was introduced as someone who broke his fast because a girl gave him food, while Green Bull is introduced as someone who hasn't eaten in 3 years, but would eat if a girl were to feed him. And this is one of my personal favorite touches because it's hilarious. Zoro has been called a moss head by Sanji how many times, while Green Bull pretty much has a quite literal moss head when he transforms into his giant forest human form. I mean, he clearly deserves the title way more than Zoro, and how can you not think of all Sanji's insults when you see him in his forest human form? Now, I know if you're a One Piece fan, I don't need to tell you about Zoro's love of booze, so I'll just point out that Green Bull loves it too. When he was soloing the remnants of the Beast Pirates, he immediately asks if they can bring him some booze. He literally soaks the stuff up using his roots. Then there's the fact that Zoro has a terrible sense of direction, and when Green Bull was asked where he was by Sakazuki, he answered in the air, which to me is a pretty Zoro response. And we also saw that in Zoro's family tree, there's a bunch of names that are associated with gambling terms. We also seen Zoro gamble multiple times, including the time he almost got his arm cut off by a supposedly cursed sword. And to me, Green Bull definitely seems like a gambler as well. Just think about it. Alone, against Sakazuki's orders, he went to Wano to kill Luffy, where the remnants of the Beast Pirates and the people that beat them and more people are. Yeah, when Shanks showed up, he's like, alright, I'm gonna peace out. But still, just going alone against his superior's orders in such an environment filled with such strong characters, it's a very big gamble indeed, and yet another parallel between him and Zoro. Like Zoro, Green Bull beyond hair color is associated with the color green, obviously, which groups these two together even more. I mean, just think about it. You can't think of either one of them without thinking of the color green. There's also a potentially big connection I can only make after the SBS was revealed. Unlike the other admirals, Green Bull has a tattoo on his body that says double unaliving, and yes, I'm censoring that for YouTube. Anyways, this is a reference to a popular Japanese film and suggests a depressing past with a woman. Would that detail not fit perfectly with what Oda revealed in his SBS about Terra, tragically dying of illness, and then Arashi supposedly dying in a battle with pirates? What I really love about this detail is, in my view, it really strengthens the argument that Green Bull could be Zoro's father, while for most people, the SBS probably destroyed the theory in their minds because it proved Ushimaru wasn't Zoro's dad. But as I've been saying, Ushimaru doesn't have to be Green Bull for this theory to work. Thus, Ushimaru being Zoro's great uncle and Green Bull being Arashi, aka Zoro's dad, can both be true. I won't get too much into Green Bull's seeming love of celestial dragons and his respect for Sakazuki as he deliberately ignores his orders, since there's just so much we don't know. A lot of stuff about his character, what he says and what he does, comes off as a contradiction. For instance, he seems to be really close to Fujitora and on good terms with him one second, and yet his ideology seems cooler than Sakazuki's the other second, while Fujitora seems to be a really good guy. Would two characters like that really get along? I don't think so. But for this video, I don't think it's really necessary to get into the truth behind what Aramaki is covering up. Whether it's some kind of purposeful cover or amnesia or falling to the dark side because of the sorrow of losing his wife, my point was only to prove that there are many clues that the forest human Green Bull could actually be Zoro's father Arashi. To prove this, it doesn't matter if he turns out to be a good or bad guy, because we saw with Sanji, just because you're a main character's parent doesn't mean you're automatically a good guy. But let me know if you're convinced, or at least agree with me, that there is a strong case for Zoro's father actually being Admiral Green Bull, even after that SBS was revealed. And if you did enjoy this video about Zoro's father and his powers, then you won't want to miss my video about Shanks' true identity and powers finally being revealed. Link to that is on screen right now. Like and subscribe to help us reach our dream of 2 million subscribers here on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next one.